So I'm back. We wanted to follow up David's overview with the discussion of how BISAC subject codes are created and maintained. And we have the expert on that topic. Connie Harbison has been a core part of the BISAC Subject Code Committee really for the entire life, or virtually the entire life of the standard, going back almost 30 years. And she's ably chaired the Subject Codes Committee for longer than anybody wants to talk about.
I actually talk about
She was recognized in 2020 with BISG's Industry Champion Award on the 25th anniversary of BISAC, and that's the same award that we'll be presenting to Walter Mosley later today. She's a tireless advocate, as you'll hear in this panel, for the effective use of the BISAC standard. And for this panel, she has recruited 3 of her fellow committee members to talk about what makes BISAC both relevant and evolutionary. Please welcome Connie Harbison.
Thank you so much, Brian. Before I get started, I feel like I should mention the elephant in the room, which if you were going to write a book about that, you'd probably give it NAT 037000 or NAT 019000. Except if it was a children's book. I'd like my panel to introduce themselves. Sorry, Michael?
Sure. My name is Michael Olnick. I've been a member of the BISAC Subject Committee for 30 years, plus a few months or so. My role at Clarivate is to make sure that all our different platforms are using the latest version of BISAC subjects. That ranges from books in print, where we have proprietary subjects that are mapped to BISAC, and eBook Central and Rialto, where we take the BISAC subjects and map them to subjects native to that platform. So some of it I do directly, some of it I coordinate with other people in the company. Connie, I thought I was going to do my favorite BISAC.
I forgot. They were going to say their favorite.
I want to do my
BISACs.
favorite BISAC. Because I looked this morning, I thought maybe there'd be one in cooking for plated lunch, but there is no code for plated lunch.
I'm writing that down.
Plated lunch. We have breakfast and we have brunch
Okay.
and tea time. No plated lunch. So I'm going to go with NAT 004000. That is bird watching guides. That is my favorite topic at the moment, not necessarily my favorite code. Although I did see a new one that kind of caught my fancy. So at BISAC, we don't like to use trade names, trademarks or brand names as subjects. So we added a code for sports and recreation flying discs. I don't know who else makes flying discs except for one company, but you know, we have to stick by our rules. But I kind of like the image of flying discs flying around somewhere. So.
Gina?
How am I going to go after that? I am Gina Wachtel. I work at Penguin Random House. I am new to this committee, but I've actually been at one version or another of PRH. The names keep changing for about 32 years. I am vice president of online content. And what that means, which is the buzzword you keep hearing, my team and I oversee metadata. What that means for us is copy that feeds online, BISACs, keywords, how we feed different things. That's kind of what my group oversees. I wrote this down from before, which I quite loved. I do think about BISACs whenever I'm awake, and my husband tells me when I am sleeping as well. So that's something that we that we need to work out.
And your favorite BISAC?
Oh, my favorite BISAC, and I did not write down the number, but it would have to be pets, dogs.
General.
Geraldine?
Hi, my name is Geraldine Zephyrin. I'm at Barnes & Noble. I started with the company. I don't know how many of you remember the Chelsea branch. I started there as a bookseller long time ago. Currently I do something that's similar to you, Gina.
Yeah.
My team, we are in product data. I handle the online copy that we get from publishers, the descriptive content, and also responsible for the related subjects, making sure that this is where BISAC comes in, making sure that we map a BISAC to a subject, an internal subject category. Anything else we can think under the sun, because we have mailboxes where we communicate with the industry and authors and publishers, smaller ones, and we can get things from what is an ISBN to, how can I make sure that you show my work on your shelves in the stores? My favorite BISAC. It's not what you think it is. It's a group of BISACs. It's spicy. It's erotica.
I love you every minute more every day.
And the reason I say that, I look at it, it makes it, once we get that information associated with a title, it makes it easy to handle, say a kid's profile, so that, if the publisher puts that code on there and puts the correct code on there, it goes in and it's like, okay, this is adult content and should not be shown on our kid's profile. So that's a great group of BISACs. It makes our jobs easier. Actually, anytime you give us a really good BISAC, it makes our job easier. Note, don't do general as another one, I would say, not so much, doesn't bring me joy, but it's non-classifiable.
Oh.
And sometimes it can be a dumping ground. It is used the majority of times with book-related items, but are not, fiction or nonfiction. But it does create a lot of review, a lot of work. So
Thank you.
It's meant to be for books that have no content at all, blank books, journals, but
Yeah.
people tend to use it as filler.
Yes,
When they don't have a code, they just put,
and it's not good.
but you're not supposed to.
Thank you all. So Brian asked if we can keep this to 35 minutes, and that's a little difficult for us because we have our monthly meetings are 3 hours long, and we use every second of those 3 hours. And we all love talking about bicycles. So we'll try to keep it. I know you're anxious for lunch. We'll try not to. If we see you nodding off, we'll stop. I wanted to give a little history about just BISAC in general, and hopefully all this information is correct. I think Phil Maddens would probably correct me if I'm wrong on anything, but so BISAC started as the Book Industry Systems Advisory Committee in 1980, and it was the main standards form of BISG. That group was responsible for helping to develop an electronic commerce standard for the entire publishing industry. And that EDI format for sending and receiving book data was called BISAC. In 1994, our own Michael Olnick gave the first BISAC title status workshop to instruct publishers how to use these newly created BISAC subject headings. Thus, within the metadata committee that existed to maintain the BISAC standard, a subject codes subcommittee was formed. Though Onyx eventually replaced the BISAC standard in the early 2000s, the subject code standard and name were retained. At some point around this time, the acronym BISAC came to stand for Book Industry Standards and Communications, But within the book industry itself, I think at this point, the acronym itself has come to be used as a noun. The code itself is referred to as the BISAC, or even as a verb. Gina one day told me that she spent the day bisecting a book. Um, So, or a book can be bisected by an editor. So a little bit about me, I chaired my first subject committee meeting in July of 2004. And I've chaired about 220 meetings since. If anyone's thinking of writing a song about that, that's 40,000 minutes. And basically the role of the subjects committee is to kind of police the BISAC subject code list. Collectively, we, the committee, determine what is added to, changed, and deleted from the list. So today we're going to talk about how the committee identifies subjects to debate and how we arrive at some of our decisions. So I'm going to start with Geraldine. Geraldine, from your experience on the committee and at one of the most important book retailers, how important are BISAC codes in the workings of a brick and mortar and online retailer?
BISACs are very important. First and foremost, please make sure to have at least one as part of our industry best practice. It's a required data point. And for us, for BNN, most of the title records that get set up in our system is done through automation via the Onyx data feeds. And if a record comes in and it's missing a BISAC code, it gets rejected. It is that vital to the business. So please include your best BISAC code. At least, definitely one, it's required. More than one, if necessary. When that information comes into our system, we use it to map to internal store subjects for our booksellers. We use it to map to search web categories that we use on the website. This information, if it's not there, it creates a delay for our vendor managers to even purchase the book. Because like I said, no BISAC, not in the system. So if they're looking for that book in our system, they're not gonna find it. So it is quite important. So please, please, please use the BISACs and preferably anything other than general.
Agreed.
Gina, from your perspective, how does a new subject code list impact a book publisher? And do you have processes in place that to update your internal systems, or do you evaluate new codes to
Sure.
classify backlist?
Waiting for them is the hardest part because we know they're coming. We, I think, have the best PubOps team in the business, and they do their thing. And once they have been absorbed into our system, they are ready to use. By that point, I do have some back-end information, so I will know, and we'll have new categories. So we're kind of flagging as we're going along the front list. But I mean, I think everyone does that. So they're used immediately. What we started doing a number of years ago is we kind of made it, the new list, part of our backlist optimization program. So what we'll do is we will pull all appropriate titles for a new code, and we'll have those ready. And then I'll have the conversations with whoever that be, whether it's an editor, an associate publisher, a publisher, about this is a new code, we think it fits. And sometimes that can lead to even further conversations like, let's take a look at the copy, let's take a look at the keywords, let's just take a look at everything. And that could lead to just more attention, possibly more marketing. So we really make it an event. Although this year I am way behind because we have a lot of codes that we agreed on this past year. And then to your point, and Connie, I told you I promised my one rule that I always have is the codes much match the contents. Yes, we should have one, we want to have three, but you're not fooling anyone if the codes don't match. I'm lying. You actually can probably get through a lot of groups, a lot of departments, and they won't see a faulty code, but the consumer will. And I think that is the point. You're not, you want to have the best codes for your books. Do not force them in.
Yeah, and
Michael?
I'll add to that. When I mentioned about the search category on the website, it's as good as the BISAC that you submit. So it definitely makes sense. So, mhm.
Michael, do you have anything to add regarding how data aggregators?
Yes, I
treat
do.
the new list?
So when there is a new list that comes out, a data aggregator is generally dealing with millions of ISBNs. There's legacy data, and there's data still coming in every day. And there's always a timing issue, because if you implement the list too soon, if you have inactive codes in the system, they might be rejected farther downstream or in your system itself. But if you wait too long and publishers are sending in new codes, your system might not recognize them. And so we have a kind of a twofold approach. We take BISAC codes from publishers and store them, but we also have this internal mapping. And within the company, there are a lot of platforms that share data. So what I did this year, I kind of did it backwards, and I kind of found out. I started just manually. So let's say there was a new biography term, and I was moving stuff that was mapped to biography general to a more specific term. And that I have to kind of go through each mapping and update it. And so it takes a few weeks. And I kind of found out that I was sending new codes to other parts of the company, but they didn't know what the new codes were. So they were telling me, we're getting these error messages. I'm like, well, because it's a new code. So I think next year I will do it the other way, which is get rid of the inactive codes first, then sort of propagate the new list to every part of the company, and then start mapping the new codes. But it's basically a timing issue.
Same.
Yeah, you have the same.
We have the same, we have to, I have to send when a new list comes out, I have to send it to multiple people who handle different databases within the company, just so everyone can make sure we're all using the same list and we all have the same list. But you mentioned, Gina, the 2023 edition.
Yes.
So, Michael, I wanted to ask you, yes. So the 2023 edition was just released in December. Hopefully everybody's using it. And this edition was somewhat unique in that it had more additions and literal changes than any edition in the past several years. At least probably the last time it had that many was when YA was added. Michael, can you talk about how we got to that final version of the new edition?
Sure. So generally, when we decide we are going to talk about a section, we recruit an expert in that section from the publishing world. Kind of usually gets the person, I think. So for psychology, we got someone from the APA publishing department to talk about psychology. For comics and graphic novels, we got someone from Barnes & Noble, Jim Kilden, who I guess was a known expert.
Used to be out there, yeah.
And then we had one topic that kind of propagated throughout all of the discussion, which was BookNet Canada had separately formed an Indigenous subjects working group to talk about how we could best represent Indigenous topics in the BISAC. And they came with a very detailed presentation, and we took several meetings to go through that. And as we were going through that and updating the Indigenous terms, we kind of realized a lot of our cultural and identity terms needed to be looked at. So I think more than half of the changes, there were over 200 changes, I think more than half had to do with terms relating to culture and identity. And a lot of the ads too. So thank you to BookNet Canada for providing that input. We actually found out from them that there was one subject they were not using at all, and which was a juvenile fiction, legends, myths and fables, indigenous people of the Americas. And I think to us, it seemed kind of benign. It's like sort of was a fictional retelling of myths or legends of indigenous people, but it was not taken that way by the publishers. There were two issues. One was that having the myths and legends classified as fiction was not something people wanted to do. They were telling us these are not fiction. This is part of a living culture. And so, you know, to us, inadvertently, because we didn't really think of it, we didn't really mean it as an offensive term, but it turned out that literally they were not using it at all. The other issue, I think, with that term was that it was grouped with things like Arthurian legends, Norse mythology, Greek and Roman. So it was kind of included as, I guess, not active traditions, whereas this was sort of still an active tradition. So we inactivated that code and we suggested a code in another section, and I think we made everybody happy.
You mentioned that changing the codes, the literals of the codes to be more in tune with the cultural landscape. A lot of times at committee meetings, things that we talk about trends that might be coming up or that we're seeing. Somebody mentioned romantasy. And, we talk about those trends and whether we need a code for them. But when we're deciding on a code, we really look at the number of books that are already published on that code. So Gina, what's your perspective on BISAC codes being reactive to the culture and market rather than predictive of topics?
Okay, so this may be a controversial answer, so I will apologize in advance, but I'm going to say in general, I would never say that publishing is anything other than reactive. I mean, right? I think we're reacting to everything, to the world, to culture, to politics, to music, to other books, to trends. I have to say it, book talk. I mean, that's the world that we live in. I think the key is to react as seamlessly as you can, make it quick and effective. We can do that a lot better now. We just have so many more resources. I mean, there are teams of just data analysts and category specialists and Google search and Amazon search. It helps publishers be able to do content acquisition, but it also helps us, I think, to be able to fine tune and see what categories we're missing and or that we don't need.
Do you want to talk about the criteria for adding new codes or what we talk about?
And I'm sure that I'll get some debate here with my members here, because I am on the part of the team where I'm actually doing a lot of BISACing. I'm actually the one doing the coding. So for me, I like to have a lot of options. So I am always for, unless it really doesn't make sense, I get it. So, but I think our general consensus is there has to be content in the marketplace. We're usually looking, what is it, like at least 100 or so, am I right? Titles, or roughly?
That's what we say.
That's what we said,
Well,
roughly. I mean, then you look at it, because there can be even more content living out there that's possibly married to a BISAC that doesn't fit. And and a better BISAC would work. So you have to kind of be able to see what's out there. Also, I'll add, if the content is all written by one author, that might be a red flag that, we may kind of put that on hold, pause that. The other thing, because so much of my life is on Amazon and search, I think that even if there isn't a lot of content there already, if we see that consumers are searching for something, the content will come. So I think that's something, that's a place where we may be able to be a bit more predictive than reactive.
Do either of you have anything to add?
Um, a term was mentioned earlier. One of the things that we're all going through right now is artificial intelligence. And I think this is the only way where we can be predictive. It's like, okay, it's here. This is like, how many other BISAC major codes will be applied to AI, because it's filtering not just from computers, but how does it affect our lives? And I don't know how many books are out there right now, but I can predict that it's going to go up.
Yes.
Another example is, pandemics. Obviously, when it was the 2019 edition, we didn't have a heading specifically for pandemics, but, or the wording, we didn't use that in any of our literals. Obviously, we didn't predict that, that was coming up and people were going to be writing a lot of books about it. But when we talked about the 2020 edition, we talked about whether that would be a term people search. Do we need to add that to, I think we added it to an existing literal to say, I think it was infectious diseases, to say includes pandemics. So people are searching for that particular term, that they'll come up with that code. So we get a lot of suggestions for ads or changes. We get them we have a form on the BISG website. It is in Google. So I saw somebody on Twitter complained that it was in Google. If you can always send suggestions as well to, just to info@bisg.org. And so we get a lot of these suggestions, and we pretty much talk about every single one we receive, except if it's just so unclear, we can't make sense of it at all. Michael, can you talk about how we handle suggestions for ads or changes, and how do we decide as a committee which codes to add?
Sure. Gina mentioned the 100-book rule.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that at the moment, it's kind of, you can almost find 100 books on anything now with print on demand and self-publishing. So 100 books is not sufficient to get you in. It might be necessary, I guess. We would really add something if it didn't really have, but it's not enough. It has to sort of fit within the structure of BISAC. So for example, there's probably 100 books about every president, except I guess William Henry Harrison. I don't know. Whoever died, whichever one died after like a month. Is that right? Okay, I got it. So, but we're not going to add a subject for every president because the structure is not such that you would do that.
Yeah.
And there's probably in the travel or history section, we could add a subject for every state, because there's certainly 100 books in cities, but it doesn't really fit the structure of the list. So the first thing is you need 100 books, but it doesn't automatically get you in, and it sort of has to fit into the structure of the list. We also get a lot of subjects. This goes back to the previous presentation, where subjects are under a lot of strain to carry information that might be better carried in other parts of an Onyx record, like the format of a children's book. I don't, or we kind of try to stay away from that kind of thing because, right, a translation and age level, aside from just general age levels that we have. In fact, I was looking at that first list from the presentation. There were no juvenile subjects at all. And there was like a special note saying, we talked about this a lot. We decided no juvenile subjects, just add the age and the grade range. And you could use all the subjects. That was our rationale for why it was constantly raised on how we should handle children's books. And we decided, no, we'll just say you could use any of the 2,000 subjects and add the age and
Can
grade
I
range.
just say, and I hate to interrupt, but that was amazing because Connie, she literally has, and I live in the details. You have like this database, I don't know, like we talked about that book 20 years ago, and this is what you were wearing, and this is who said this.
Connie
and-
found out.
And right, and this was the debate, and we said no because of this. I mean, it's like this historical context that goes back forever. It's amazing.
Well, Connie found notes where, so not only did we not have juvenile and fiction or juvenile nonfiction, which we gradually added, we didn't have young adult codes for a long time. And apparently we were about to add them in 2004, and I sent in some comment.
Yeah.
And I convinced everybody not to do it.
You did.
So, sorry.
So in the
And
space
then
of-
later on, we did.
in the space of, I think, 2 meetings, was yes, we're adding them, no, we're not.
I wasn't even at the meeting. I was away. I just sent in some comments and said, I don't really think we should do this. And I guess it worked for until we added, I don't remember when we ended up adding young adult. I'm sure everyone's happy now that we have the young adult codes.
Yes.
My solution was just change it to say juvenile and young adult fiction and then just add the grades or the ages. But probably I was wrong about that. But at the same time, the question is now, should we add middle grade? Should we add tween? Should we, like, how far do you go in terms of having the subjects carry information? Because everyone wants to use the subjects to track sales or
Mhm.
for other internal reasons. And it does put a lot of strain on the subjects, and everyone loves the subjects. So they want the subjects to do it.
So Brooke is
And-
telling me that we're running out of
Oh
time.
my
Oh.
God.
Oh.
I don't want to
Sorry.
Okay.
conclude without talking about the merchandising
Oh.
themes and regional codes, and how a bookseller or downstream partner might use them. And Michael, again, I'm sorry to pick on you.
Sure, it's
You want to
okay.
talk a little about the?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was mentioned previously a couple of times. Merchandising codes are there. They have a value in the Onyx Code List 27. They have a value of something, 11, no, 22. So it's in Onyx. You could use merchandising codes. If you're using Onyx, you could use merchandising codes. They, we kind of think of them physically as a table you would put out in a bookstore
Mhm.
for Father's Day, as
Yeah.
it was mentioned, or its graduation, or its summer vacation. You know, books you would group together that are not necessarily of the same subject, but are of interest to a specific audience or are more sellable at a specific time of year or for a specific event like the Super Bowl, or a topic that you would kind of want to bring things together that is not actually covered by subjects such as banned books or I'm reading up from the thing. I got new glasses so I could see it's perfect.
Maybe.
They're ready to use. I think we're in a little loop of, it's almost like an Onyx 3.0 thing. It's like people don't want to send it because no one is taking it yet, but people don't want to
I
take it
think
yet because
that's
no
a
one is
good
sending it.
transition
we
into
want it.
Geraldine,
We
where Barnes
want
and
it.
Noble actually
Please
started
send it.
taking.
Okay.
the codes.
We are accepting the code, the merchandising themes. Publishers are starting to send us these codes. And of course, the more the merrier. It's as Michael said, you know, it will help our booksellers being able, when they're doing research on display tables and what to display. And this goes well with BISAC regional themes. You know, a store in a different state, in a different area can look for something hyper-local. And being able to set up a display that's meant just for that store. Please, chances are every single one of you have a book on your person right now. And that book will probably match a BISAC code, probably multiple BISAC subject codes, a BISAC merchandising theme, probably multiple BISAC merchandising theme, and maybe a region. I don't know about fantasy regions, but
The regions are only real places.
at the moment.
Work on that.
So please send it to
Um,
us.
Michael and Geraldine talked about the regional codes. So I just want to briefly mention those as we're pushing more for the merchandising themes at the moment, but the regional codes do exist and people do use them. I have on the slide the structure of the regional codes. It's a little complex with different levels, but we start at continents and pretty much go down to boroughs and neighborhoods. So the slide is an example of the regional codes, and they too are on BISG's website. So,
If you like hierarchy, they're very hierarchical.
yes. So with that,
Oh, wow.
Oh my God, that's more to say. I got a lot to say.
anybody?
Hello, my name is Edison from International. BISAC are very important for us, even internationally. And I do have a question. In today's world, besides BISAC categories, what role do keywords play in the success of a title? And is discoverability for buyers and consumers?
Keywords?
I could take it on, whoever.
please.
Sure. I think they're very important. I think they go hand in hand. It's just one of the tools in your arsenal. When we work on a title, we want the entire positioning for that title to be aligned. So that goes for the title, the subtitle, the series, the bisects, the keywords, the copy. So the more you have that talks about your book and the more that that's all aligned, the better off you are.
And you're better using the keywords for that than the subtitle. Because a lot of people
Oh,
use the
yes.
subtitle to put
Oh,
in.
no subtitle stuffing. Is that what
No.
you're saying? You know, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
We don't want to know that subtitle is a New York Times bestseller.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
and it's not a
please.
subtitle.
Yeah, but we spend my team, a lot of time on keywords. So if you have any other questions, just give us a call.
So I apologize that we ran a little long, but I did warn you. And
Quick plug for the BISAC to THEMA mapping, because THEMA came up before. So there is a mapping. If you have BISAC codes, there's a mapping available to THEMA if you want to use both. Okay, that's it.
thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.